Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to another peaceful journey through the gentle currents of history. Tonight, we're going to drift back nearly 900 years to a time when the morning mist rolled over bamboo forests and ancient temples dotted the Chinese landscape like quiet guardians of wisdom. Take a moment now to settle into your most comfortable position. Let your shoulders relax. Allow your breathing to slow and deepen. Tonight, we'll walk together through the life of one of China's most beloved heroes, not through battles and conflicts, but through the quiet moments that shaped a gentle soul into a legend. This is the story of Yue Fei, told not as a tale of war, but as a meditation on loyalty, family, and the simple beauty of a life lived with purpose. Let the soft rhythm of his story carry you into restful sleep. Chapter 1. The Village of Gentle Beginnings. In the year 1103, during the reign of Emperor Huizong, in a small village called Tangyin in what is now Hainan Province, the world seemed to move at the pace of flowing water. The village was not grand or famous, just a collection of humble homes with curved clay tile roofs, surrounded by fields of rice and millet that swayed gently in the morning breeze. Here, among the ordinary rhythms of farming life, lived a family named Yue. The father, Yue Fei, was a simple farmer whose hands were weathered by years of working the soil. He woke each morning before the rooster's call, stepping into the cool dawn air to check on his small plot of land. His wife, whose gentle nature was known throughout the village, would rise quietly to prepare the morning meal. The soft sound of her movements, like whispered prayers in the pre-dawn darkness. The Yue family's home was modest, 2 rooms with earthen floors, walls of packed mud and straw, and windows covered with oiled paper that let in a warm, honeyed light. In winter, the family would gather around a small brazier, sharing stories and warmth, as the wind whispered through the bare branches of the persimmon tree in their tiny courtyard. It was into this world of simple contentment that a child was born, Yue Fei. The midwife, an elderly woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, arrived at the Yue home on a night when the moon hung full and bright over the village. The birth was peaceful, marked not by fanfare, but by the quiet satisfaction of new life entering a loving home. The baby's first cries were soft, almost musical, and as his mother held him close, she noticed something remarkable. The child seemed unusually calm, his dark eyes alert and peaceful. The village elders, when they came to offer congratulations, remarked that the child had the look of wisdom about him, though such observations were often made about newborns and quickly forgotten. As young Fei grew from infant to toddler, he displayed an unusual gentleness. While other children his age might cry and fuss, Fei seemed content to observe the world around him with those same alert, peaceful eyes. He would sit for long periods, watching his mother tend the small vegetable garden behind their home, his tiny hands reaching out to touch the soft leaves of bok choy and the delicate stems of green onions. The seasons turned gently around the Yue household, each bringing its own quiet rhythms. In spring, young Fei would toddle after his father as Yue Fei prepared the rice fields, his small feet making tiny prints in the soft mud. During summer, he would nap in the shade of the persimmon tree while his mother worked nearby, the sound of her humming mixing with the gentle buzz of insects and the distant laughter of village children. As autumn painted the leaves in shades of gold and crimson, Fei began to show signs of the remarkable character that would define his life.
When other children fell and cried, he would approach them with concern, offering comfort in his innocent way. When the village cats came begging for scraps, he would share his own small portion of food, his parents watching with quiet pride as their son displayed a natural generosity. By his 4th year, the villagers had begun to notice something special about the Yue family's quiet son. Unlike other children who might be easily distracted or restless, young Fei could sit still for remarkable periods, watching and listening with an attention that seemed beyond his years. When adults spoke of serious matters, he would listen with a gravity that was both touching and slightly mystifying.
Chapter 2. The Gentle Teacher and Early Learning. As Yue Fei reached his 4th year, his parents began to notice something special about their quiet son. Unlike other children who might lose interest quickly, Fei could sit for hours listening to the village elder tell stories of ancient heroes and wise emperors. His small face would grow serious with concentration, and afterward he would ask thoughtful questions that surprised the adults. The village had one teacher, an elderly scholar named Master Zhu, who had once served in a minor position in the imperial bureaucracy. He had returned to his home village in his later years, content to tend his small garden of medicinal herbs and teach the few village children whose parents could spare them from farm work. Master Zhu lived in a modest house near the village temple, surrounded by carefully tended bamboo groves that rustled softly in the breeze. When Yue Fei's parents approached Master Zhu about teaching their son, they did so with great humility. They were simple farmers, after all, and education was typically reserved for the children of merchants or minor officials. But something about the boy's quiet intelligence had impressed even the village headman, and Master Zhu agreed to meet the child. The first meeting took place on a warm spring morning when the air was filled with the scent of flowering jasmine. Young Fei walked beside his father down the narrow path to Master Zhu's home, his small hand trustingly clasped in his father's weathered one. The house appeared before them like something from a story. Walls of weathered wood and stone, with windows framed by delicate latticework, and a small courtyard where goldfish swam lazily in a ceramic pond. Master Zhu was waiting for them, sitting cross-legged on a woven mat in his study. He was a thin man with a long white beard and eyes that held the gentleness of someone who had found peace with the world. Books and scrawls lined the walls, and the air held the pleasant scent of ink and old paper. Sunlight filtered through the bamboo outside, casting dancing shadows on the floor. "Approach, young one," Master Zhu said softly, his voice like wind through leaves. Fei stepped forward without fear, his dark eyes meeting the teacher's with a directness that was unusual in one so young. For several moments, the old scholar simply observed the child, noting the stillness of his posture and the alertness behind his gaze. "Can you tell me what you see in this room?" Master Zhu asked. Other children might have pointed to the obvious, the books, the scrolls, the writing brushes. But Fei's answer was different. "I see learning," he said simply, "and peace." Master Zhu's eyebrows rose slightly. This was indeed an unusual child. From that day forward, Fei began his formal education. Each morning, after helping his parents with their dawn chores, he would make his way to Master Zhu's house. The lessons began simply, learning to hold a brush properly, practicing basic strokes, and memorizing simple characters. But even in these elementary tasks, Fei showed remarkable focus and dedication. Master Zhu taught with infinite patience, understanding that education was like a garden. It required careful tending, proper timing, and gentle cultivation.
He watched as young Fei absorbed not just the mechanics of writing, but the deeper meanings behind the characters they practiced. When they learned the character for loyalty, Master Zhu would explain its significance, and Fei would listen with an attention that seemed to come from his very soul. The boy's progress was remarkable, but what impressed Master Zhu most was Fei's character. He was never proud or boastful about his quick learning. Instead, he approached each lesson with humility and genuine curiosity. When he made mistakes, he would study them carefully to understand where he had gone wrong. When he succeeded, he would simply bow respectfully and ask what he might learn next. As the months passed, other villagers began to take notice of the young scholar. They would see him walking to and from his lessons, his small figure carrying his writing materials with careful reverence. Word began to spread beyond Tongyin that Master Zhu had found a truly exceptional student, one who combined quick intelligence with rare depth of character.
Chapter 3: The Art of Writing and Ancient Wisdom. The months passed like gentle seasons, and young Fei's education continued in Master Zhou's peaceful study. The teacher had begun to realize that his small student possessed not only intelligence, but also an unusual depth of character. While other children his age might fidget or lose attention, Fei could spend an entire morning practicing a single character, striving to make each brushstroke as perfect as possible. Master Zhou introduced Fei to the ancient art of Chinese calligraphy with the same care a gardener might use when planting a precious seed. Writing, he would tell the boy, is not merely making marks on paper, it is breathing life into thought, giving form to the spirit. Fei would nod solemnly, though at age 5 he understood this more in his heart than in his mind. Each morning, after the rooster had announced the dawn and the village had begun to stir, Fei would arrive at Master Zhou's door. He had learned to prepare the ink himself, grinding the ink stick against the stone with careful circular motions, adding just enough water to achieve the perfect consistency. The ritual of preparation had become as important to him as the writing itself. The study where they worked faced east, catching the soft morning light that filtered through the bamboo grove. Master Zhou had arranged a small, low table specifically for Fei, carved from cherry wood and worn smooth by years of use. Here, surrounded by the gentle sounds of the waking village, the soft splash of water being drawn from wells, the quiet conversation of early risers, the distant lowing of water buffalo, the boy would practice his characters. Today, we will learn the character for loyalty, Master Zhou would say, his voice as gentle as morning mist. He would demonstrate the character first, his aged hand moving with practiced grace, each stroke flowing naturally into the next. Loyalty is like the roots of bamboo, hidden beneath the surface, but giving strength to everything above. Fei would watch with the intense concentration that had become his trademark, memorizing not just the shape of the character, but the rhythm of its creation. When it was his turn, he would dip his small brush in the prepared ink, take a deep breath to center himself, and begin. His hand might tremble slightly, he was, after all, still very young, but his intention was always pure and focused. The lessons extended far beyond mere writing. Master Zhou understood that education was like a river. It should flow naturally, carrying the student toward understanding without force or haste. As they worked, he would tell Fei stories about the ancient emperors and philosophers, weaving moral lessons into tales of adventure and wisdom. Long ago, Master Zhou might begin, as Fei carefully formed the character for righteousness, there was an emperor who ruled not with an iron fist, but with a gentle hand. His people loved him because he understood that true power comes from serving others, not from being served. Fei would pause in his writing, his young mind absorbing both the story and its deeper meaning. By his 6th year, Fei's calligraphy had reached a level that impressed even visiting scholars from the regional capital. His characters flowed with a natural grace that seemed impossible for one so young, each stroke placed with precision and artistic beauty.
But more than technical skill, his writing revealed something deeper, a spiritual understanding of the meanings behind the symbols he created. Master Zhou began introducing more advanced concepts, the principles of good governance, the importance of justice tempered with mercy, and the delicate balance between strength and gentleness that marked a true leader. These lessons often took place during walks in the countryside, where the natural world provided living examples of the principles they discussed. "Observe the water in this stream," Master Zhou would say as they sat beside a babbling brook. "It is soft, yet it can carve through the hardest stone. It yields to obstacles, flowing around them, yet it always reaches its destination. This is the way of true wisdom, persistent but gentle, adaptable but unwavering in purpose." Young Fei would nod thoughtfully, his dark eyes reflecting the dancing sunlight on the water. Even at 6, he seemed to grasp these deeper truths, storing them away in his mind and heart for the challenges that lay ahead.
Chapter 4. The Scholar Warrior Emerges. As Yue Fei approached his 7th year, it became clear to everyone in Tangyin that this was no ordinary child. His scholarly achievements had reached levels that impressed even learned officials from the provincial capital, while his character showed a depth of wisdom that seemed to come from an old soul housed in a young body. Yet Master Zhao, in his infinite wisdom, recognized that true education must cultivate both mind and body in harmony. The boy had grown taller, and his face had begun to show the strong, noble features that would mark him in adulthood. His dark eyes, always intelligent, now held depths of understanding that seemed to encompass not just knowledge, but practical wisdom about how that knowledge should be used. When he spoke, even adults would listen carefully, recognizing that his words often carried insights beyond his years. Master Zhao had begun teaching Fei advanced philosophy and statecraft, using the classical texts to explore questions of governance, justice, and moral leadership. During their morning lessons, teacher and student would engage in discussions that resembled the dialogues between ancient philosophers, with Fei asking questions and offering observations that delighted his elderly teacher. "Tell me, young Fei," Master Zhao said one spring morning as they sat in the garden watching new leaves unfurl on the bamboo, "what do you think makes a leader truly worthy of following?" The boy considered the question with characteristic seriousness, his gaze moving from the growing bamboo to the distant mountains. "A worthy leader," Fei replied slowly, "must be like bamboo, flexible enough to bend with the needs of his people, yet strong enough to stand firm in times of storm. And like these mountains, he must be constant and reliable, providing shelter and protection for those in his care." Master Zhao nodded with satisfaction. Such answers convinced him that his student was developing not just knowledge, but the practical wisdom that could guide others. It was during this period that he made a decision that would prove crucial to Fei's future development. "My young friend," Master Zhao said one evening as they concluded their studies, "your mind has grown strong and wise, but the body that houses such wisdom must also be cultivated. I have arranged for you to begin training with Master Chen, a retired military officer who lives near the village temple. He will teach you the disciplines of the body, just as I have taught you the disciplines of the mind." Fei received this news with the same quiet acceptance that marked all his learning. He understood instinctively that this was not a departure from his education, rather its natural completion. A scholar who could not protect what he valued, who could not stand strong when tested, was incomplete in his service to others. Master Chen was indeed a remarkable man. His hair had turned white during years of military service, and his weathered face bore the dignity of someone who had seen both honor and hardship. When Master Zhao brought young Fei to meet him, Master Chen studied the boy with eyes that missed nothing. "So," Master Chen said quietly, "you are the young scholar I have heard about. Tell me, why do you wish to learn the martial arts?"
Fei's answer came without hesitation. To better serve others, Master Chen, knowledge without the strength to protect it serves no one. The old soldier nodded approvingly. This child understood something that many adults never grasped, that true strength was not about personal power, but about the ability to serve and protect. From that moment, Master Chen committed himself to training not just Fei's body, but his warrior spirit as well. The training began simply, as all good education does. Master Chen taught Fei to stand perfectly still for long periods, developing the inner quiet that would serve him whether he was contemplating a poem or facing an opponent. The boy's natural grace, evident even in childhood, began to manifest in controlled, purposeful movements. Strength, Master Chen would tell Fei during their training sessions, is not about force. It is about harmony between intention and action, between mind and body. A true warrior moves like water, fluid when flowing, hard as ice when striking, always finding the most natural path to his goal.
Chapter 5. The Gentle Strength and Physical Training. As Yue Fei entered his 7th year, Master Zhou made a decision that would prove crucial to the boy's future. A scholar's mind must be housed in a strong body, he told Fei one crisp winter morning. And a strong body must be guided by a disciplined spirit. The teacher had arranged for Fei to begin training with Master Chen, a retired military officer who lived in a modest compound on the outskirts of the village. Master Chen was a man of few words but great presence. His hair had turned white during his years of service, and his weathered face bore the quiet dignity of someone who had seen both the honor and the sorrow of military life. He had agreed to train the young scholar not because of any payment, the Yue family had little to offer, but because Master Zhou had convinced him that this child might one day serve the empire in ways they could only imagine. The training began gently, as everything in Fei's education had. Master Chen understood that the boy's strength would come not from harsh conditioning, but from the gradual building of both physical capability and mental discipline. Each morning, after his scholarly lessons with Master Zhou, Fei would walk to Master Chen's compound where he would learn the ancient art of Chinese martial disciplines. The compound was simple but beautifully maintained. A courtyard paved with smooth stones was surrounded by wooden practice equipment, posts for striking, beams for balance, and targets for accuracy training. Ancient pine trees provided shade and shelter, and their needles carpeted the ground with a soft, fragrant cushion that muffled the sounds of practice. Strength, Master Chen would tell Fei, is not about force. It is about harmony between intention and action, between mind and body. The boy would nod with the same serious attention he gave to his calligraphy lessons, understanding instinctively that this physical training was simply another form of education. The exercises began with breathing, long, slow inhalations and exhalations that help center the mind and prepare the body. Fei learned to stand perfectly still for long periods, developing the inner quiet that would serve him whether he was writing characters or facing an opponent. His natural grace, evident even in childhood, began to manifest in fluid, controlled movements. Master Chen taught through example and gentle correction rather than harsh instruction. When Fei's stance was imperfect, the old master would simply adjust his posture with a gentle touch. When the boy's breathing was too shallow, Master Chen would demonstrate the proper technique and watch patiently as Fei practiced until he achieved the correct rhythm. "Watch the water in that basin," Master Chen said one spring afternoon as they practiced in the courtyard. "When the wind stirs it, does it resist? No, it moves with the force, absorbing its energy, then returns to stillness. This is the way of true martial arts, not meeting force with force, but understanding how energy moves and flows. Young Fei absorbed these lessons with the same thoroughness he brought to his scholarly studies. He began to understand that martial arts was not about violence or domination, but about harmony, discipline, and the cultivation of inner strength. The physical movements became a form of moving meditation, each gesture precise and purposeful. As the seasons passed, Fei's coordination and strength developed remarkably. His scholarly training had given him exceptional focus and patience, qualities that served him well in martial practice. Unlike other children who might become restless or impatient, Fei could practice the same movement hundreds of times, each repetition an opportunity to refine his technique. Master Chen began introducing weapons training, starting with the wooden sword. A weapon, he explained, is not separate from the warrior. It becomes an extension of his body, his intention, his spirit. The sword moves as your arm moves, strikes where your mind directs, defends what your heart values. Fei's progress was remarkable, but what impressed Master Chen most was his character. Despite his growing skills, Fei never showed arrogance or aggression. He understood that his training was not for personal glory, but for service, to protect those who could not protect themselves, to serve his family, his village, and ultimately his empire. The combination of scholarly wisdom and martial training began to create something extraordinary in young Fei. He carried himself with quiet confidence, spoke with measured thoughtfulness, and moved with natural grace. Village elders began to remark that they had never seen a child quite like him, one who seemed to embody both the gentleness of a scholar and the strength of a warrior. Chapter 6. The Call of Duty and Growing Awareness. By his 8th year, Yue Fei had become something remarkable in the quiet village of Tongyin, a young person who combined scholarly excellence with martial skill, yet remained as humble and kind as he had been as a small child. The villagers would often pause in their work to watch him pass, noting how he still bowed respectfully to his elders and spoke kindly to every person he met, regardless of their station in life. But beyond the peaceful boundaries of Tongyin, the great Song dynasty was experiencing troubles that would soon reach even their remote village. The northern barbarian tribes, led by the fierce Jin dynasty, had begun pressing against the empire's borders with increasing boldness. News of these distant conflicts arrived sporadically, carried by merchants and traveling officials whose worried expressions spoke of challenges that written reports could barely convey. Master Zhu had begun incorporating these current events into Fei's education, not to frighten the boy, but to help him understand that learning and skill carried with them the responsibility to serve when called upon. Knowledge and ability, he would tell his student during their morning lessons, are gifts given to us so that we might serve others. The greater the gift, the greater the responsibility. One evening, as autumn rain drummed gently against the windows of Master Zhu's study, the old teacher shared with Fei the classic texts about duty to country and emperor. They read together the ancient words of Confucius about the gentleman's obligation to serve righteously, and Fei listened with the deep attention that characterized all his learning. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls as teacher and student explored concepts that would shape the boy's entire future. "Master Zhu," young Fei asked thoughtfully as they paused in their reading, "if our empire is truly in danger, what is the duty of someone who has been given the gift of education and training?" The old scholar looked at his student with eyes that held both pride and a touch of sadness,
recognizing that the boy was beginning to understand the weight of his own destiny.
"The duty of such a person," Master Zhou replied gently, "is to place the welfare of the people above his own comfort, to serve truth above convenience, and to protect the innocent even at great personal cost. This is the path of righteousness, young Fei, and it is not an easy one." During this same period, Master Chen had begun teaching Fei more advanced martial techniques, including basic swordsmanship and the fundamentals of mounted combat. The boy's natural grace and coordination, combined with his scholarly discipline, made him an exceptional student. But more importantly, Master Chen observed, Fei seemed to understand instinctively that these skills were meant for protection and service, never for personal aggrandizement. A true warrior, Master Chen would tell Fei as they practiced in the courtyard, does not seek conflict, but he is prepared when conflict seeks him. He does not desire to harm others, but he will not allow harm to come to those under his protection. These lessons took on new urgency as news from the northern borders grew more troubling. Young Fei absorbed these teachings with growing seriousness. He began to understand that his peaceful childhood in Tongyin had been preparation for something greater. The characters his mother would soon tattoo on his back, "Serve the country with utmost loyalty," were already written in his heart, though he did not yet know it. The boy's training intensified during this period, but it was balanced by increased attention to moral and philosophical instruction. Master Zhou spent long hours discussing with Fei the principles of just governance, the importance of protecting the common people, and the delicate balance between firm leadership and compassionate mercy that marked truly great leaders. As winter approached, bringing with it reports of Jin forces massing near the border, young Fei would often be found in quiet contemplation. He had begun to sense that his time of learning in the peaceful village was drawing to a close, and that larger responsibilities awaited him. Yet rather than feeling fear, he experienced a growing sense of purpose and determination to live up to the trust that his teachers and family had placed in him. The villagers, too, began to look upon young Fei with a mixture of pride and anticipation. They could see in his bearing and character the qualities of someone destined for great service. Yet they also watched him with affection, noting that, despite his growing awareness of the wider world and its troubles, he remained the same gentle, respectful boy who had always lived among them. Chapter 7. The Mother's Wisdom and Sacred Tattoo. As Yue Fei entered his 10th year, his mother began to sense that the time was approaching when her son would be called to serve purposes larger than their quiet village life. The news from the north had grown more urgent. The Jin dynasty had broken through imperial defenses and was advancing toward the Song capital. Young men throughout the empire were being called to military service, and it seemed inevitable that Fei's exceptional skills would soon be needed. One evening in late autumn, as the family sat around their simple hearth, sharing the day's last meal, Fei's mother spoke words that would echo through the rest of his life. "My son," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I have watched you grow into someone special. Your learning and your skills are gifts, but they are not yours to keep for yourself alone." The firelight flickered across her weathered but kind face as she continued. "Soon, you may be called to serve our emperor and protect our people. When that time comes, you must go with my blessing, but also with my guidance carved into your very flesh, so you will never forget what truly matters." What happened next became one of the most famous stories in Chinese history. Fei's mother had decided to tattoo 4 characters on her son's back. Jin Zhong Bao Gua, serve the country with utmost loyalty. This was not done in haste or anger, but with the careful deliberation of a mother who understood that words could fade from memory, but characters carved into the skin would remind her son of his highest duty even in the darkest moments. Young Fei received his mother's decision with the quiet reverence that marked all the important moments of his life. At 10 years old, he understood the profound significance of what she proposed. This would not be merely a mark upon his body, but a sacred commitment that would guide every decision he would make for the rest of his life. The tattooing took place over several evenings, with Fei's mother using traditional methods passed down through generations of village women. Each character was carefully drawn and then pricked into the skin with a fine needle, the ink mixed with soot and oil from their family lamp. Fei bore the pain without complaint, understanding the profound love and trust his mother was placing in him. These characters, she explained as she worked by the soft light of oil lamps, will be with you always. When you are tired, they will remind you to persevere. When you are tempted to think of your own comfort, they will remind you of your duty. When others question your motives, these words will speak the truth of your heart. The first character, Jin, which means utmost, was tattooed with special care. This means to give everything, his mother explained, not just some of your effort, not just what is convenient, but everything you have to give. Young Fei nodded solemnly, feeling the weight of this commitment settling into his very bones. The second character, Zhong, which means loyalty, carried the deepest meaning. Loyalty is not blind obedience, his mother taught him as the needle traced its lines. True loyalty means serving the highest good, even when it is difficult, even when others do not understand. The boy understood that this loyalty was not to any single person, but to the ideal of protecting and serving his people. The third character, Bao, which means repay or serve, spoke of gratitude and service. We have been given much, his mother said softly. A peaceful village, loving family, excellent teachers, and exceptional abilities. These gifts create a debt that can only be repaid through service to others. Fei felt this truth resonating deep within his heart. The final character, Gua, which means country, completed the sacred phrase. This is not just the land beneath our feet, his mother explained, but all the people who call this land home, the farmers and scholars, the merchants and craftsmen, the young and old, the weak who need protection and the strong who provide it. When the tattooing was complete, Fei's mother placed her hands gently on her son's shoulders. Now you carry these words not just in your memory, but in your flesh. They will remind you always of who you are and what you were born to do. Promise me, my son, that you will honor these characters with your life. Young Fei turned to face his mother, his dark eyes bright with tears of gratitude and determination. I promise, mother, I will serve my country with utmost loyalty, and I will never forget that these abilities were given to me so that I might protect and serve others. In that moment, by the flickering light of the family hearth, a legend was born. The 10-year-old boy who received his mother's sacred tattoo would grow up to become one of China's greatest heroes, and the 4 characters on his back would guide him through victories and defeats, through glory and betrayal, remaining true to his mother's wisdom until his final day.
Chapter 8. The Call to Service and Departure. The spring of Yue Fei's 12th year brought the news that everyone in Tongyin had been anticipating with mixed feelings of pride and sorrow. Imperial recruiters had arrived in the regional capital, seeking young men of exceptional ability to join the emperor's forces. Word had already spread about the remarkable young scholar warrior from the small village of Tongyin, and a formal invitation arrived requesting Yue Fei's service to the empire. The letter, written on fine silk paper and bearing an official seal, was delivered by a courier who seemed somewhat surprised to find such a humble village home. Master Zhou read the document aloud to the assembled family, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his aged eyes. The invitation was phrased with the courtesy due to one whose reputation had preceded him, acknowledging both his scholarly achievements and his martial potential. Yue Fei listened to the reading with the same quiet composure that had marked all the significant moments of his young life. At 12, he had reached nearly his full adult height and bore himself with a natural dignity that commanded respect. The tattoo on his back seemed to pulse with new meaning as he considered the reality that his time of preparation was ending and his time of service beginning. His parents received the news with the mixture of pride and sorrow that marks such moments in a family's life. They had always known this day would come, had even prepared for it through years of sacrifice to provide their son with the best education possible. Yet the reality of his departure still struck them with the full weight of parental love and concern. "My son," his mother said quietly, her hand resting on his shoulder where she could feel the raised characters of his tattoo beneath the cloth. "This is what we have prepared you for. The characters on your back were not placed there for decoration, but for guidance. Trust in them and in the wisdom you have gained, and you will never lose your way." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Master Zhou insisted on providing Fei with essential texts and his own calligraphy brushes, worn smooth by years of use. "These books contain the wisdom of ages," he said, with emotion thick in his voice. "Let them be your counselors when human advisors fail you." Master Chen presented the young man with a sword of excellent quality, one he had carried during his own service, and now passed on with ceremony and blessing. "This blade has served honor faithfully," he told Fei, as he placed it in the boy's hands. "May it serve honor again through you. Remember, a sword draws its strength not from the metal of its making, but from the righteousness of its wielder." The blacksmith, inspired by the occasion, contributed a piece of armor crafted with special care. Other villagers brought small gifts, a writing case from the carpenter, warm clothing from the weaver, dried foods from the farmers. Each gift was given with pride and blessing, as the entire community felt they were sending their best into service of the empire. Perhaps most precious of all was the farewell conversation Fei had with his mother. Sitting together in their small courtyard as the evening stars appeared, she spoke to him about the weight and privilege of the trust he carried. "Remember," she said, her hand resting gently on his shoulder, "that true strength comes not from the sword you carry, but from the righteousness in your heart. The characters on your back will guide you, but it is your own virtue that will make them meaningful." As the night of departure approached, young Fei spent long hours in meditation and prayer. He walked through the village that had nurtured him, saying quiet farewells to the places of his childhood, the stream where he had played as a small boy, the temple where he had learned to pray, the fields where his father had taught him the value of honest work. On his final morning in Tongyin, Fei rose before dawn and made his way to Master Zhou's study one last time. The old scholar was waiting for him with tea prepared and a scroll of his finest calligraphy as a parting gift. "You go now to serve the empire," Master Zhou said. "But remember that the empire is not buildings or borders, it is people. Protect the people, young Fei, and you will serve the empire truly." When the time for departure came, the entire village gathered to see him off. Yue Fei stood before them in his traveling clothes, his new sword at his side, his precious books carefully packed, looking every inch the young scholar warrior he had become. Yet in his dark eyes, those who had known him since childhood could still see the gentle, thoughtful boy who had always put others before himself. "I go to serve," he said simply to the assembled villagers, his voice clear and steady. "I carry with me the wisdom you have given me, the love of my family, and the prayers of my community. I will not forget who I am or where I come from." With that, he embraced his parents one final time, bowed deeply to his teachers, and set off down the road that led away from Tongyin toward his destiny. The village watched until his figure disappeared over the distant hill, knowing they had sent forth someone who would honor their quiet community in ways they could barely imagine.
Chapter 9. The Young Soldier's Excellence. In the military camp, Yue Fei's exceptional nature became evident within days of his arrival. While other recruits struggled with the transition from civilian life to military discipline, the 13-year-old adapted with remarkable ease. His years of training with Master Chen had prepared him well for the rigorous physical demands, while his scholarly education with Master Shu had given him the intellectual foundation to quickly grasp complex military strategies. The camp commander, General Liu, was a veteran of many campaigns who had seen countless young recruits come and go. But something about this quiet boy from Tongyin caught his attention immediately.
During morning formations, Yue Fei's posture was perfect, his attention unwavering. When given orders, he executed them with precision and without complaint. Most remarkably, he seemed to understand not just what he was being asked to do, but why it was important. "This young man thinks like a strategist, not just a soldier," General Liu remarked to his aide after observing Fei during his first week. The boy's questions during training sessions were not those of someone seeking to avoid work, but of someone genuinely trying to understand the principles behind the tactics they were learning. Within a month, Yue Fei had been promoted from the ranks of common soldiers to serve as an aide to the officers. This was unprecedented for someone so young, but his combination of scholarly intelligence and natural military instinct made him invaluable for planning and communication. He could read and write with the skill of a trained scribe, yet also demonstrated tactical understanding that impressed seasoned commanders. The other soldiers, rather than resenting this rapid advancement, seemed drawn to the young man's natural leadership qualities. He never boasted of his abilities or looked down on those who struggled with tasks that came easily to him. Instead, he would quietly offer help to those who needed it, sharing his knowledge in ways that built up rather than diminished others. "Brother Yue," the soldiers began calling him, despite his youth. There was something about his bearing that inspired confidence, not the arrogance of someone who thought himself superior, but the quiet assurance of someone who genuinely cared about the welfare of those around him. When he explained a tactical concept or demonstrated a weapon technique, he did so with the same patient thoroughness that Master Shu had shown when teaching him calligraphy. During quiet evening hours in the barracks, Yue Fei would often be found writing letters for soldiers who could not read or write, or helping them understand the tactical lessons of the day. His mother's teachings about service echoed in these small acts of kindness, and the characters tattooed on his back seemed to guide him toward choices that honored both his personal virtue and his duty to his comrades. The camp's training regimen was rigorous, designed to forge ordinary men into effective soldiers. But for Yue Fei, who had already mastered the fundamentals under Master Chen's tutelage, the training served more to refine skills he already possessed than to teach new ones. His swordsmanship was fluid and precise, his archery accurate and consistent, his horsemanship natural and confident. What truly set him apart, however, was his understanding of military strategy. When the instructors presented tactical problems, how to assault a fortified position, how to defend against cavalry charges, how to coordinate infantry and archers in battle, Yue Fei's solutions often displayed insights that surprised even veteran commanders. He seemed to possess an intuitive grasp of how battles flowed, how terrain affected tactics, and how the morale and capabilities of soldiers influenced the outcome of engagements. General Liu began including the young soldier in planning sessions, initially as an observer, then increasingly as a participant. "Tell me, young Fei," the general asked during one such session, "how would you approach this enemy position?" The question referred to a detailed map showing a Jin dynasty fortification that was causing problems for Song forces. Fei studied the map carefully, his dark eyes moving across the terrain features, troop positions, and supply lines marked on the document. "The direct approach seems strongest," he said thoughtfully, "but it is also what they expect. If we could create a demonstration here," he pointed to the main gate, "while moving our real assault force through this valley," his finger traced a route that would bring attackers to the fortress's weakest point, "we might achieve surprise and avoid their prepared defenses." The older officers exchanged glances. The boy's analysis was sound, showing both tactical acumen and an understanding of human psychology. The defenders would naturally focus their attention on the most obvious threat, potentially leaving other approaches less well defended. As winter approached, bringing with it news of increasing Jin pressure along the northern borders, Yue Fei found himself assigned to increasingly important duties. He served as a courier for sensitive communications, participated in reconnaissance missions, and even began leading small units of soldiers on patrol duties. In each role, he demonstrated the same combination of competence, reliability, and natural leadership that had marked his rapid rise through the ranks. The transformation from village scholar to military leader seemed almost effortless, but those who knew him well could see that it was built on the solid foundation of character and training that had been laid during his years in Tongyin. The discipline he had learned from Master Zhu served him well in mastering military regulations and procedures. The physical conditioning and martial training from Master Chen made him confident and capable in combat situations. Most importantly, the moral instruction from both teachers, reinforced by his mother's tattoo, ensured that his growing power and authority were always directed toward protecting others rather than advancing himself.
Chapter 10. First Battles and Rising Honor. When Yue Fei reached his 14th year, the opportunity for real combat finally arrived. The Jin forces had launched a major offensive against Song positions along the Yellow River, and General Liu's regiment was ordered to march north to provide reinforcement. For young Fei, this represented the moment when all his years of preparation would be tested in the crucible of actual warfare. The march north took 2 weeks, during which Yue Fei served as one of General Liu's key aides, helping to coordinate the movement of supplies and maintain communication between different units. His ability to quickly process information and relay clear orders made him indispensable to the command structure, despite his youth. The other officers had initially been skeptical of relying so heavily on someone so young, but his competence and reliability quickly earned their trust. As they approached the battlefield region, the signs of war became increasingly evident. Refugees streamed southward, carrying their possessions, their faces marked by the particular exhaustion that comes from fleeing one's home. Yue Fei watched these people with deep compassion, understanding viscerally for the first time the human cost of the conflicts he had studied in abstract terms during his education with Master Zhao. "This is why we fight," he wrote in a letter to his mother during a rest stop. "Not for glory or advancement, but for these people who have nowhere else to turn. The characters you placed on my back burn with new meaning when I see what happens to those who have no one to protect them." His first actual combat came during a skirmish at a river crossing, where Jin cavalry had attempted to outflank the Song positions. Yue Fei was serving as a messenger between units when the attack began, and he found himself caught in the midst of the fighting. What happened next would become the first of many stories told about his courage and tactical brilliance. Seeing that a group of Song soldiers had become separated and surrounded by Jin cavalry, Yue Fei made an immediate decision that showed both his tactical understanding and his moral character. Instead of seeking safety, as a messenger might be expected to do, he gathered a small group of nearby soldiers and led a rescue operation that not only saved the surrounded men, but also turned the tide of the skirmish in favor of the Song forces. The rescue was accomplished not through reckless bravery, but through careful observation of the terrain and enemy movements. Yue Fei had noticed a small gully that could provide concealed approach to the Jin position, and he used this natural feature to outflank the enemy cavalry just as they had attempted to outflank the Song forces. The irony was not lost on him, using the enemy's own tactical concept against them. "Follow me quietly," he had whispered to the soldiers he had gathered. "We move like water through stone, finding the natural path, flowing where there is no resistance, striking where they are weakest." His voice carried such confidence and clarity that the men followed without question, trusting in his judgment despite his youth. The flanking maneuver succeeded beyond all expectations. The Jin cavalry,
focused on the surrounded Song soldiers, were completely unprepared for an attack from their rear. Yue Fei's small force struck at precisely the right moment, creating enough confusion and casualties to allow the trapped soldiers to break free and rejoin the main Song force. Word of the young aide's initiative and tactical skill spread quickly through the ranks. General Yu, initially concerned that his messenger had abandoned his duties, became filled with pride when he learned the full story. Yu acted not just with courage, but with wisdom. Many brave men have died because they confused recklessness with valor. Yu saved lives through intelligent action. The victory at the river crossing was followed by several more engagements as the Song forces pushed northward to relieve the besieged cities. In each battle, Yue Fei found himself taking on increasingly important roles. His combination of tactical insight and proven courage made him a natural choice for difficult assignments: reconnaissance missions, coordination between units, and even independent command of small forces. During the siege of a Jin-held fortress, Yue Fei proposed a strategy that demonstrated his growing understanding of psychological warfare as well as military tactics. Rather than attempting a costly direct assault, he suggested a series of feints and demonstrations that would convince the defenders they were about to be attacked from multiple directions. The confusion and exhaustion created by these false alarms would weaken their readiness for the real assault when it finally came. "The mind is the first battlefield," he explained to the assembled officers. "If we can defeat their confidence in coordination before we engage their weapons, the physical battle becomes much simpler." The strategy worked perfectly, and the fortress fell with minimal Song casualties. By the end of the campaign, Yue Fei had been promoted twice more and had earned a reputation that extended far beyond his immediate unit. Stories of the young scholar warrior who fought with both sword and strategy began to spread throughout the Song army, yet those who knew him best observed that success had not changed his fundamental character. He remained humble in victory, compassionate toward defeated enemies, and always mindful of the ordinary soldiers under his command. "I am no different than I was in our village," he wrote to Master Zhao. "The principles you taught me, that knowledge must serve wisdom and that strength must serve justice, these guide me now as they did when I was learning to write characters. The battlefield is simply another classroom where these lessons are tested." As winter approached and the campaign concluded with Song forces having successfully relieved the besieged cities, Yue Fei found himself permanently assigned to General Liu's staff with the rank of junior officer, an almost unprecedented advancement for someone of his age and background. Yet he wore his new responsibilities with the same quiet dignity that had marked all his achievements, understanding that rank and recognition were not rewards for personal glory, but tools for better serving others.